Will you pray with me? Holy Father, we thank you for your Spirit helping us here. God, I pray that as the Nicaragua team speaks this morning, that your Spirit encourages us by the same Spirit that helped them and encouraged them while they were there. God, I pray that that same Spirit moves through this place with the same sense of encouragement and excitement, God, to advance your kingdom. God, we thank you for all the things you're doing on earth. We love you. It's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen. You may be seated.
Amen. Well, good morning, church. How are you? Three of you are good. Awesome. That's good. Hey, you did better than the first service the first time, I think. That's good. And there's fewer of you, so that's something, I guess. Well, it's good to be with you this morning. Most of you guys know me. I'm Ryan Lashwell. I'm the student pastor here, and I had the privilege of helping to lead the team down to Nicaragua. We took 14 individuals down there to serve for 2 weeks. It was awesome. It was intense, but it was great. And so I just wanted to open up the service by thanking you sincerely from my heart. Thank you for sending us, for encouraging us, for giving and sacrificing your hard-earned money to support us going down there to further the kingdom. I will share one story here before. I'm going to invite a couple of the members from the team to come and share some of their stories, because I don't want you to just hear from me. I want you to hear what God did through the team, not just an overview. So this is your quick overview, but I want to share one story. I didn't share it the first service because one of the individuals I had share come up was going to share the story, but he's not here for this service, so I get to share it now. While we're down there, you get put on individual sites to serve for the couple of weeks, except for me, right? Because I was the pastor, I got to rotate and move around and go to all the sites. So the upside is I got to see an overview of all of the different ministry sites that were happening. So there's the sports site, education, medical, physical therapy, the agriculture, there and microfinance, social work, where they work with the ladies that come out of rough circumstances. And so just a lot of good different ministry sites where they have site leaders pouring into these people every day. And all we do is we get to join them and help them and all that stuff. And so my first day was on the sports site, and down there they love soccer. And they're in shape. And I don't love soccer, and I am not. And it's humid down there. And so there was a lot of sweating going on that day. Soccer for 4 hours with kids ages 9 to 15. And so I was wore out and tired. But while I was there, I got to meet a gentleman named Ernesto, and he was like the community elder. And he said, man, we're so thankful for you guys coming and being here. What a blessing. And I was like, man, I'm just playing soccer. It's not that much. And so I asked how I could pray for him. Is there anything that we could do to bless them? And he said, man, if you could come and some way, somehow, if you could mow the field that you're playing on, which they call it a field, and he was very proud of it. But the field was angled quite a bit. It's difficult to play soccer on because it's up and down, and their goals were literally trees that they had planted and then just cut early, about 6 feet high, a little bit apart, and then put a cross beam across from them and tied it together on both sides. But they took pride in it, and they wanted to take care of it. And so this elder, Ernesto, asked, man, if there's any way that you guys could help mow it and take care of it, that would be a real blessing. And so I went back to the base that day, and I talked with Drew, Alyssa's husband, and said, Drew, is there a way we could get a lawnmower to go? And on one of my free days, because I had days that weren't scheduled, I had every site, but then I had days that were open. And so I said, on one of the open days, maybe I could go back, and while they're doing their ministry stuff, I'll just mow it. And he goes, yeah, I'll see what we can do. Well, it just so happened that the gas lawnmower was already occupied that day for other purposes, and so all Drew had to give us was a push mower, which that's great when you have, a little tiny patch of winter rye that's, 2 inches tall. But when it's jungle grass that's 2.5 inches thick and 9 inches tall, it's less good. And so we gave it a whirl for a good half hour. Me and Bo and Isaac were pushing that thing a half inch at a time, and before it get clogged up and we'd have to pull all the weeds out and stuff like that. And when we started doing that, the site leader, Nestor of the sports site, got in his bag, he pulled out a machete, and he got down and he started hacking away. And what I loved was within 10 minutes of us out there making fools of ourselves and sweating like crazy, and Nestor on his hands and knees hacking away with a machete. We had 12 to 15 young boys and young men come out with their machetes, and they brought extra for us and start helping us. And the community that you feel when there's something like that was powerful. Now that day, like I said, I had the privilege of jumping around at different sites, and there were certain days where I felt like I was dead weight because I didn't have a whole lot to contribute. Like at the medical site, I'm not a medical professional and all that, so I'm just here, I'm observing or whatever. I took some notes, and they put me to work, which was good, but I didn't feel like I had a whole lot to contribute. But every time I was feeling that way at a particular site, it was like, I don't know what to do, I don't know why I'm here today or what God's going to do. God showed up and gave me tangibly something to see him doing at work in that moment. And so this particular day, while we're there and we're trying to mow, and I go, man, what is God going to do here today? Aside from just encourage and inspire me that there's little kids that are willing to work hard and take care of and support their community, which was a blessing. But in that, one of the young men who came over sat and had lunch with us, and he was talking with me and with Nestor, the site leader, and he had all kinds of questions about Jesus and about the Bible and about theology. And in that moment where I got to sit and talk with him about God and his love for him and his care and his concern for him, because he was afraid that maybe he messed up or screwed up too badly, that maybe he wasn't good enough for God. I had the opportunity to sit with him and pray with him and remind him that it's about Jesus' goodness towards you, not necessarily your goodness back to him that saves you. And so do we want to be faithful and work hard for the Lord? Yes, we do. But remember that your security is in Jesus. And he wept and he cried and he go, man, that's why I'm here today. Right? We got to take out some of the grass, though not all of it for sure. But just in those moments where I was feeling like, man, why are we here? What's going on? God would always do something like that. So although some of them had the blessing of getting to pour into one site for 2 weeks, I got the blessing of going to different sites and watching how God was working there. And man, what an experience. So I wanted to start this morning by first thanking you guys so much for encouraging us, providing, giving, and sending us in the ways that you did. So thank you. Please give yourselves a round of applause. It was amazing and inspiring to watch and to see God's provision through you as a church. So thank you for that. And then I wanted to do this first service, but I didn't know if one of the individuals was here, so I didn't. I had to skip it. But I would be remiss if I didn't include in my thank yous a couple of individuals. So if I could please have Sherry, if she's still here, is she in here? Sherry Gentry, can you please come down here? And my wife, Cass, who's hiding back there in the family room, please come up here if you would. Yep, sorry. She's putting our baby boy to sleep, so it might wake him up, but we're going to do it anyway. Because he kept me up until like 1 last night, so my turn. So anyway, I want to publicly thank these two ladies here who both in their own ways made it possible for me to help lead the trip. Sherry, in so many ways, made it possible for the trip to happen. Her experience, her knowledge, her expertise, and her love for the ladies ministered to them in ways that I couldn't have done, and in ways that I probably shouldn't do. Being there with the ladies at night when they're tired and they're wore out, she was there for them. And so all the things leading up through the meetings, the information, as well as the relationships that she built and poured into these, she really ministered to them. And so it would not have been possible without you. Thank you so much, Sherry. We have something for you here, just as a way to say thank you for all you did. And then my poor wife, I love her so much. She's always supported me in ministry. But some of you may not know, the week before we went to Nicaragua, I was at high school camp at Catalina Island for a week. And so for 3 weeks, just about straight, I was gone. And when you have 3 small children, we have an 11-year-old, a 4-year-old, and at the time a 4-month-old. And I was like, see ya for 3 weeks. And she bore that burden all by herself, kind of alone there. And so she supports me in ministries in ways that deserve acknowledging. And so thank you so much to both of you. I appreciate you. And now I would like for you guys to hear from a couple of the team members of what God did in and through them and their observations and how they saw God work. So I'm going to invite Jordan to come up here and start here. And so, ladies and gentlemen, Jordan Cornelia. There you go.
Hi, so I'm Jordan. I went into this trip not really knowing fully what to expect. I went on a mission trip back in 2016 after I graduated high school, but it was kind of your typical, like you go for a week, we painted some buildings, we talked with a few people, we went and did like touristy stuff, and then we moved on with our lives basically. And I knew this trip was gonna be a lot different because SI pairs short-term missions with long-term missionaries. So the ministries that are happening out there are happening whether teams go or not. And those relationships are being built and poured into regardless, which is such a beautiful thing to see and then to be a part of. So I was on the medical site while I was out there, and our main goal was going out in the community, and we would do a devotional, and then we would pray. And one of the things that really hit me is it was always, when we asked how we could pray for someone, it was give us something very specific. They were very intentional about how can we specifically pray for you, not just say, oh, I hope they have good health, but saying like specifically heal their foot or their stomach or whatever is going on with them, as well as praying that they were surrounded by people who showed them God's love. And then after the devotional, we would run a clinic. So I'm a nurse, so I was working with the nurse out there, as well as Haley. So we would pull people in, we would take their vitals, and then they would go outside and wait, and then they would go see the doctor. And then after they saw the doctor, we were also the pharmacists, and we would give them whatever medications they needed. But one of the really beautiful things to me was it wasn't like an American focus of like, okay, we have to get through all these people, we have to make sure we see them and get it done, and we have to be done by this time. There were a lot of points I felt like I wasn't being very helpful because I wasn't doing a lot of vitals, but I was out talking with people or playing with the kids or just getting to know the people who were there. And the really cool thing is that was their focus. They didn't care that I wasn't sitting there taking blood pressures and helping with vitals. They cared that I was out there connecting with these people and helping them to feel loved and included and to see God's love, which to me has been a really big frustration in the American medical system of just like not having that time to connect with people. So being out there and just getting to talk with people or play with kids and blow bubbles and things like that was really cool. And there was this one mom, since we were there for 2 weeks, we did this same clinic the first week and then the second week. And the first week I was kind of like making faces at our baby and he was smiling at me. So she came and just like handed him to me. And with the language barrier, didn't say anything, which is like, here you go, and kind of like walked away. And I was like, okay, he's cute, that's fine. And then the next week she walked in and she saw me and she like handed him to me and he was fussy and teething and she was getting checked out by the doctor that week. And it was just really cool to see that even though we couldn't really communicate, she had this trust and she just knew that I was there to care for her and for her son and play with them and just make it easier on them. And then she like asked me if she could take a picture, and she was just so excited. And she's like, "So you're gonna be back next week, right?" And then was really upset when she realized I had to go home. But it was so cool that even with the language barrier and things like that, here we are still connecting, and there was still a language being spoken that's universal. And I just absolutely loved that. And then the other big thing that really hit me while I was out there is going into it, I was like, okay, I'm taking all the stuff I'm dealing with and that I've been going through, I'm just gonna leave it at home. I'm gonna go focus on these people, and then when I get back home, I can deal with all of it. And then while I was out there were quite a few situations where I just felt really compelled to share what I've been going through the last few months. And it was my first time sharing my testimony after having been through all this stuff. And there was this one community member who was there when we were doing our testimonies. And she was just so compelled to share her story with us and was crying with me because she's been through similar things. And she just poured out her heart to me and then shared her testimony with us. It was just so cool to see how I was like, okay, God, I tried to say, oh, I'm going to remove myself and leave all this at home. But then he used the pain and the things I've been going through and helped me connect with others. Again, despite a language barrier or despite any uncomfortableness or like, hey, I've known you for 5 days now. And there were multiple situations where what I've been going through, because I was willing to share it, I was then able to connect with other women in a really cool way that wouldn't have happened otherwise. So it was just really cool to see that. And the people in Nicaragua are just so generous and loving and caring. And there was one house visit we were at. This lady has a couple older sons and then a younger daughter. And when we say house, it's like they have like tin things like leaning against each other, kind of held together. And you know, they don't have doors or anything like that. There's bugs everywhere, like not what we would call a house by any means. And they're really small. And this lady was talking and she said, no, it's my mansion. And we all kind of laughed. And she's like, no, I have love and I have my family. So it's a mansion. And it was just so cool to see that again against an American mindset where we're like, no, this is tiny, you don't even have doors, like you can't be happy here. But all the people were so genuinely happy because they had these relationships and this care for each other. So that was just really cool to see. And again, as Ryan said, just thank you so much to everyone for all your generosity so that we were able to go and have this experience and meet these people. And yeah.
Hello. All right. So I was on the physical therapy site. So as Ryan kind of knows, he came to the site and it's we had a lot of downtime. They have something there called Nica time, which is like Nicaraguan time, and so basically it's just normal to not show up to a doctor's appointment if it rains at all or if it drizzles or anything, because that's what they call inconveniences. So there's a lot of downtime in terms of sometimes patients wouldn't show up, sometimes they would, sometimes they'd show up an hour late, and that's okay. But you know, I had the privilege to share to be on this site, and one of the cool things about having that downtime is just the extra relationships that we were able to build with everyone, and the time that we were able to spend. So, man, there's so many stories that come to my mind, and hearing everybody else's stories in the first service and then within this service, and just all the memories flooding back are amazing. And on the physical therapy site, the main difficulty was that there was essentially there's a free healthcare system there, and the healthcare system there isn't the best. And it's great that people can have a place to go, but the main thing is that a lot of them are that work there, they're doctors that have their own specific clinics, their own private clinics, and usually costs about $20 to go there, which is a lot of money there. I believe like the average farmer, they make 67 cents an hour there. So when you're paying $20 to get really good care, then that's something that's very difficult. And then there's the free healthcare system where basically the government will pay people that are doctors to essentially help out there. And so they pretty much are like, okay, well, I'm not getting paid as much here, but I'm getting that extra money. So, you know, I'll treat you okay here, but I'll treat you really well in my clinic. And so there's a lot of stuff that happens there. And so a lot of the patients that we had were essentially either victims of some of troubles with COVID and it affecting previous inflammation within certain limbs, or people that were just, treated not as well within the healthcare system. So one instance is there's a lady, we did a home visit, and she basically broke her wrist just right here. But essentially they casted her all the way up to her arm, and they casted it too tight, so then it's cutting off blood flow circulation and ended up injuring her arm. So then she ended up taking a saw or scissors or something and cut it off, so then it was right here. So that way she could have a cast, and then she had to cut a hole in it because it was also bothering her wrist. And so those are some of the difficulties that we saw every day, kind of going there. And just with the people there, they're very humble and they're very caring, and you could tell with every single word that they say that they have meaning behind it. So usually here we say something like, we're like, oh, thank God that happened, and like, was there really any heart behind that, or are we just saying that as a phrase? But whenever they would say thank God, you could see in their eyes that they truly meant it, and that they truly were thankful for us being there. And on the first day, they actually had us, the physical therapist sat us down, and he goes, all right, so put any sort of mindset away that, like, you're an American, like, we're going to come here, we're going to get stuff done, we're going to keep going, we're going to forge forward, and we're going to change so many lives here and everything. He's like, no, like, this is more relational. You're spending time with them, and you're building that time with them. And to me, that was a huge shift, just coming from like working, and you have to be there on time, you have to get these tasks done, you have to come up with something. But there, it's more so, like, I see your face every day, and I spend time with you, and I know these things about you. So even within the first few minutes, I think you were sharing, Ryan, in the very beginning, there's how there was one person that you met within 5 minutes, they were sharing prayer requests with you that were deep and meaningful. And literally within 3 to 5 minutes, like, everyone was just welcoming, and they were there, and they wanted to know you, and they wanted to get to know you. And by the second time that they come into their treatment, it's like they're your brother or your sister, and they greet you, and they're excited. And they have something that stood out to me huge there is that they have a word there. I forget what it's called. I think it starts with a P, but it basically represents shame within their culture. And so here, if we get embarrassed or anything, we just laugh it off. We just make a joke, and we just kind of brush it off and say, like, I'll do better next time. But there they experience real shame, and they experience, if they do something wrong, or they do something that isn't even what we'd see as a big deal, they internalize that, and they take that to heart, and they use it to change who they are. And one of the biggest things that we would always see is that in their educational system, they learn English. And so there's a lot of them that, I'm there for a week, and I'm trying to speak with my very broken Spanish, just barely learning anything. And then they would nudge me, and they're like, I speak English, by the way. And I'm like, you could have told me that, But essentially but the thing is that if they pronounce something wrong in English, they internalize that, and they go like, this is, I feel shame for this. I feel bad for saying this word wrong. Even though they're learning and they know more English than I know Spanish, they don't look at themselves or hold themselves to a standard of, I'm better than you, or I'm, like, I know more language than you, I know this aspect of life. They internalize that, and they feel that shame. And you can just see that in the way that they live out their life. And like, I'm saying shame, but it sounds like a bad thing, but for them, they see it as a way of humbling themselves and internalizing things, and just really being in the moment and feeling what God wants them to feel. And so whenever we go to a home visit, or whenever we would talk with anybody, they were intentionally in that, and they remembered things, and they wanted to push us to be better, and they wanted to invest all their time and their energy into us. But they're there for physical therapy. Their bodies are hurting, and they're wanting to make sure that we're good, and that they're talking with us, and that we have those experiences with them. But so if I could ask for prayer for anything, one of the guys that stood out to me, his name is Saul, or Salvador, and he had hydrocephalus, so it's where the head swells up and everything, and they have to put a shunt within his neck. And so he didn't walk until he was 4 years old, and that brought its own challenges for him, and brought his own his own pains and difficulty walking, but he was able to actually end up walking and learning how to walk again, and was able to work a construction job, and he worked as like the taxi service there, riding bicycles and everything. And so he actually was able to have good function of his legs. He ended up getting COVID, and it affected him poorly, and he ended up being paralyzed in one leg, and ended up being like tightening up on the other side of his leg. So he ended up having almost like a palsy within his legs, and he's been getting treated now for 3 years, and he can still walk and everything, but he needs a cane. And one of the things that affects him emotionally, and he's a great leader within the church, and that's what Paul, the physical therapist, was telling me, is that he has an amazing heart and he loves people, but that's something that's holding him back, is he feels like he's not good enough because of the way that his legs function. And that's just something that I was able to talk to him a little bit about, and I could just see it whenever I saw him interacting with people, or when I saw him driving away from church, everything, he's waving, and he's a great church leader, and he's a great man of God and everything, but he just needs extra prayer for encouragement, and for just for his heart, and just for continue on what he's doing. But yeah, we do have a video here that's going to pop up. It's a slideshow, so it's going to show just some highlights from the trip.
right, so there's a little taste of what happened down there. And looks like you're gonna get a little bit more of a taste of what happened down there. I'm looking at the time and go, okay, it's 11 minutes we got. So you're gonna get a taste of Nika time.